we get experimental science. We're curious, non-judgmental.
Start off with some ancient amber. These amber pieces, so they're made from tree sap, and these pieces in particular are about 30 million years old, and there's insects in them. Think about like Jurassic Park. And we here together as a stream identify what exactly is in here. Oh, there is our first sample of the evening. So we always start off with a zoomed out appearance, and we take an image and we look at the size of the animal and see what size they might be, and we do a little bit of comparative biology. Folks at home are encouraged to guess and identify what these samples are. We'd like to do it together. If you see something where you're like, I think this is what this animal looks like, and you find a reference image, then you're able to, like, you can drop a link into the chat and be like, I think it might be this. We'll look at it together. We'll say, yep, it might be that, or it might be something very, very different. A lot of either bee or wasp feel to it. And I'm agreeing with that point. I think I'm leaning a little bit towards the idea of it being a bee. The chitin is preserved. What detail can you make sure if it's a bee or a wasp? So one, Durton, like overall body structure, we can primarily at the abdomen. So an abdomen is a very good starting point to look at. So you notice we need to take a better image for this one, but it's not a very pointy abdomen if we zoom out. It's more of a circular abdomen. It looks more like this than like this. So wasps normally have a pointier abdomen. Their head shape might also be a little bit more ant-like. And there's a couple of other key features to look for as well. Like wing number is sometimes a telltale sign. But really it's body plan that we're looking for. So that's a very big metric of how we tell them apart. They have much more pointed bodies. Yeah. So Durton, if we look at this abdomen here, so Durton, do you see how this is a very circular abdomen? Back here, like there is a point, there is a tip that it has, but it's not very directional. It's not like it's almost a super aerodynamic structure. Instead, it's just circular, and it's because that's where, if there's any venom glands, that's where they're located, and if there's any active ovaries or not, that's where they're all located. So same with a wasp, but the wasp has a much more aggressive injection procedure, like of how the venom is deposited, and that's another reason why it's a little bit more narrow in structure. Also, wasps have stingers that can sting multiple times, versus most bees can only sting once. After they sting, they die. And the reason for that is because a wasp stinger is very sharp, and there's no ridges to it, versus a bee stinger has ridges to it. It's almost like a bread cutting knife. And that bread cutting knife, it can go in no problem, but when they're trying to pull out the stinger, it gets caught. So it's the same way as those ridges in a bread cutting knife. They go in no problem, but when they come out, they have these little nooks and crannies on the blades, and those get stuck in your skin, and that's why that poison, the venom gland, as Matrix says, and sometimes more than just the venom gland, also are separated out from the rest of the body. So it's not so Zulu, wasps tend not to be colony living. Or if they are colony living, it's a size hierarchy, and it's not for the benefit of a genetic queen. So versus bees, the workers are sterile. Their sole purpose, Zulu, is to protect the queen, who is the one laying embryos, distributing the genetic information. Like, that is their sole function, is to protect that particular caste. So if they end up dying from them protecting the queen, the life of one in that kind of evolutionary system is meaningless. As long as the queen survives, none of those other workers matter. What matters is the queen survives, and when she reproduces and lays potential future queens to distribute and save their genetic information. Versus wasps, because most of them don't have that colony lifespan, there's a lot of solitary wasps, or they're solitary during their reproductive part of their life cycle. They got to protect themselves. It's not in their interest to just die, because if they die, then their bloodline dies. So they have to do a lot of other kinds of like protection, which is more stinging on that front. Yeah. But bumblebees and carpenter bees have smooth stingers capable of stinging multiple times without dying. Fortunately, there are both relatively docile species. Honeybees, on the other hand, stinging is fatal. Yep. But that's just why it ended up becoming serrated. It's probably like whatever predator drove them to be like that. But again, be like that. If the bees or of any species they have, a bee dies for the good of the colony, that's fine because that's not the genetic information that they're meant to be preserving. We have Where Ducky says, why did bees develop that sort of stinger? So the venom gland sticks and causes more pain to make you think twice. That is a great question, Where Ducky. That one, it's difficult to provide a good answer for that. The reason being is there's many different bee species. As Alex mentioned, some of them have unserrated stingers that can sting multiple times. Others have the serrated stinger, like our honeybee, or that can only sting that one time. There must have been an evolutionary pressure, Where Ducky, for them to survive like that. I'm not sure what the evolutionary pressure would have been, depending on what kind of predators that they had. I wonder if there's a difference in the pain index, and maybe they needed a difference in pain index against whatever predator was pushing them towards that. That's a great question, Where Ducky. I'm not sure. But, from Darren, I love the fact that bees cook intruding hornets with a group workout. Yes, to increase the temperature. And that temperature increase, there's a few degree difference between what they can survive in versus what the actual bees end up dying in. I wonder if the evolution saw the beehive as a single creature, therefore it can sting multiple times. So Durton, actually that's a very controversial topic, it turns out. So that would be called a superorganism, where the organism is treated as one singular organism. The early research has indicated that that's what ants and bees were. They're a superorganism where you're talking about everything as part of a colony rather than there are individuals within the colony. So you never look at the individual, but you look at the colony as a whole. But it turns out that that's actually a debated topic, because nowadays what we think is happening is it's more likely that each individual still has individualistic behavior, even though they look like they're all working for the good of the colony. So it's a very nuanced question, and I don't know if we have a good answer for it, but it's a very good question. You definitely see if honeybees in particular stand out against this adaptation, that improved chances against bears and other things would go for the honey. I do wonder though, Where Ducky, so if something like this is 30 million years old, and this is not the honeybee, this is a different bee species, but I can't see its stinger right now, but let's say maybe its stinger is also the same. What would be driving it at that particular time, right? So it might be that there was something with the predators that they had, and it may not have been a bear, it might have been something very different. It could also have been other insects, right? So we don't know what exactly pushed evolution that direction in terms of selection pressure. So that would be one possibility. And Where Ducky, there's also the possibility of whatever that was they were stinging at the time. It might happen. It might be that the exoskeleton, if it's an insect, or the skin of an animal that it was stinging, it may not have caused this effect. It might be that there's unique properties of our skin that causes bees to die after one sting, versus stinging their normal predators would not cause that. So there might be a difference in the consistency of what they're stinging. Cliff asks, does the sticking of the bee stinger also happen when they sting another insect? I only heard it only happens when they sting skin. So for honeybees, it only happens when they're stinging skin of either a human or some other animal that's coming near the bee's site. But there have actually, Cliff, been found pieces of amber where it looks like the bees are stinging individuals. It might be a wasp now, I can't remember. It looks like they are stinging each other. I think it was a bee study. And so because that sticks out in my head, I might suspect that there is the possibility that there would be subspecies of bees that could do this to other insects as well, that kind of stinging. Yeah. So the individual surviving is not necessarily for the colony, but it allows something like a fatal attack to develop opposite of an evolutionary pressure. Alex says, although widely believed that a worker bee can sting only once, partial misconception. The stinger is in fact barbed so that it lodges in the victim's skin, tearing loose from the bee's abdomen. Only happens if the skin of the victim is sufficiently thick, such as a mammal's. Barbs are seen as a warning system, don't lodge in other insects like a wasp. So there might also be other, like we were saying a minute ago, like other mammals or other predators, and maybe their skin is of a different consistency, and you can sting there and not have the stinger actually pull out the internal anatomy of the animal. So this is our, as we wrote out, our Prolabia bee. I'll show you all the other. There is a sample amber that I found via Google that made it look very much like it's the same thing. All right, y'all, let us look at, and there is the image that I found as a reference piece. So that was my sneaking inkling that's what we, that's the one that we identified right there. Again, it looks structurally very similar. Everything from like the wings, we weren't really able to make out anything off the wings, but the antennal structure, you even see the 3 ocelli on the head. A lot of the eye cells, the antennal segment number, the leg structures even look very similar. So I'm leaning on this being that extinct bee.